Good morning, Christian. Today I would like to discuss very current and exciting topic, which is space technology. There are a lot of rumors, there are a lot of discussion around it, there are a lot of investments, huge investments. Of course, we just finished this Moon Artemis mission, and of course understand that this is on the NASA level, but this kind of technologies which they test at the moment probably will come to us, maybe very soon, maybe a little bit later, but we will get this technology as well. Another thing is that amount of satellites, amount of usage of Starlink or different type of satellite networks, private satellite networks for the commercial usage. Also ideas about heavy rockets, which can transport everything in 1 hour in every part of the globe. Of course, it's very specialized logistics, but possible, very expensive. What do you think about the usage of this space technology at the moment?
I think it's a coming technology, and I think also we saw at the last Leaders in Logistics that the European aerospace was actually quite proactive in and actually welcomed partnerships in order to work on these areas. I think for most of us it's a little bit ahead because I think that when we talk about supply chains, I know that ships are monitored and usually they are monitored. I think I talked to a guy working in Maersk and saying that they're using quite a lot of different models in order to make sure that they are put on top of each other in order to have full clarity on where every container is and where the ships are all the time. We also know in where we're using heavy machinery, these are tagged, and heavy machinery is there's not far away from a heavy machinery to a truck on the road. So I see that these type of monitorings are coming in more and more, and the more junk we put in the sky, the more satellites we put up there, the more possibilities we have to have control over our assets. And as you mentioned Starlink, I can give you an example on how we actually together with our vendor we were doing vehicle inspection and there you need to have cameras at your gates where you take the vehicles in and take the vehicles out. And one of the things that is actually extremely costly is to cabling and get the power into these places because they're usually out at the perimeter of your land, of your properties, because there it makes sense to control what goes in and goes out. And both cabling and also wiring for the cameras really expensive, as we talked about, around 40,000 euro or something like that in order to make one pole up and standing. And that's maybe in Denmark because we have high salaries, but it was quite a lot of money, and it was almost killing our use cases because we could see that if we needed to do this in most of our sites, it would be, of course, when you lay the land and you're building the houses, but this is something that typically now have come as a brownfield solution, that this was way too expensive. And the vendor was very smart to act on that because they saw also that there could be some problems in scaling their solution in other places if we had the same problem. And so they came up with a solution where they made a pole which was solar powered, which means that they got the power from there, and then they were using Starlink solution as the data provider. So I think that these things are without we us knowing it, they slowly are coming into us. So space technology, yes, it's an area where there's a lot of talk about it right now, and I think that it will sneak into our business as carriers, either through commercial agreements where we are buying a company to monitor our trucks or our ETAs for the line hauls that comes in, or the mid-miles line haul. And this gives much better clarity than we could have in a different way by getting these ETAs monitored constantly based on even what they can see of traffic on the ground. So yes, I think this is a technology that's coming. It's going to sneak in the back door in many cases, but yeah, definitely an opportunity.
So the one topic came to my mind, which I'm very interested in. It's early signals of supply chain disruptions. So if we can monitor, we can especially monitor of our subcontractors, transport companies, but also suppliers. So if we have tools for this monitoring, like satellites, imaginary, etc., we can very early find the signals that our supply chain can be disrupted. So, for example, if we monitor ship in the ports and we monitor the weather and we understand that this port is very often closed because of the, I don't know, storm on the China Sea, then we can, before it happened, know that probably our ships were stuck in the port.
Mm.
Or we can detect some, for example, fire in the factory of our suppliers. So we will know, and with some probability, much faster, that our supply chain can be disrupted. The same probably we can imagine that in the future the same can be on the trucks and classic last mile type of business when we monitor and find the early signals of some problems and disruptions.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that one of the things that you talked about is disruptions in our supply chains. It can be fires hazards because we know that's happening quite a lot in especially southern Europe these years, where you have routes that needs to be altered because there are fires. It can be flooding also, where we have possibilities to actually make an acute change in our routing plans. If by combining with these maps where we can gather information on the disruptions on either the roads or areas which are not accessible, and it's the same way that we have today. You have farmers looking at their crops from above in order to see how they're growing and not growing, and so I think it's a question about that we just learn to actually think about these technologies. And I think that actually I did some years ago, I did some trials on creating maps in areas where we don't have really good maps for the roads, especially in the northern Nordics. It's not an area which is very much focused, but we had actually problems in understanding all the roads and having them in. So I engaged with a company in India to screen satellite photos, and based on those photos, they could see if roads were one way or another. Because if all the vehicles were always driving in the same direction, we could assume that they were actually was a one way road. And it turned out that it was actually a very good way to construct even your maps as well. So we things from above will be much more accessible in the future than it is today, and we can actually use them in many different cases in our organizations.
Mhm. What about the idea? I think it was SpaceX idea to transport everything with these super heavy rockets. Everything you can transport in 1 hour. I would say almost super express from one point in the globe to the another point in the globe. Will be any future for that?
Well,
Probably, of course, the cost of it would be absolutely crazy.
I think it's like the Concorde. It was a beautiful thing, but it was not viable
Yeah.
in the long run. And but of course, if you find things that is worth to transport in that way, but it's not going to be something that's going to be transported with Post Nord. I can probably guarantee you that it's a beautiful idea. I think that we will concentrate on more close to Earth things. We talked about will we use drones in the future. I think that at some point there will be some drones use where you can use this also to plan routes above, where you don't have people, because that's one of the most important thing that you need to know in order to limit your problems. I think that you can probably use these technologies as well, but it's I would take it more down to earth cases, which is as you said, ETAs, route planning, these things where we can use these data because they're going to be accessible, and what you can access you for a limited cost, you should use. definitely.
So conclusion is look at these technologies because they are available right now and you can use them and they may be even cheaper alternative for the classic one.